Hello everyone, welcome to Indian Economy by Aman Soni. In today's news, sir, we shall be discussing the important articles related to economy from the Hindu newspaper. In the editorial page, there is a news about the 5G spectrum auction, progress without limits. We all know that the government has fixed the date for 5G auctions and it has set the base price, and there have been representations by the telecom companies, and the government is revising all that, considering all that. And this editorial talks about the progress that the 5G can provide and at the same time various challenges about the auction. The article rightly appreciates the government saying that bringing the 5G at the right time will increase the digital connectivity, especially when the 5G it has low latency. It is almost 10 times faster than 4G, and because of all which it can be integrated with the emerging technologies like the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, big data analytics, and it also has applications in the medicine. For example, telemedicine. We can also perform remote surgeries because the latency in the 5G is very low. Latency is the amount of time that the data takes to travel from one place to another. When compared to 4G, the latency in 5G is very low. In simple words, it means 5G is very faster. So the editorial says the 5G will give a high boost to digital connectivity, and it will also increase the wireless telephony and the improvement in the delivery of services, especially the online education. We all know how the online education sector got changed because of COVID pandemic, and the increase in mobile banking because of increasing penetration, and also telemedicine. The government also rightly put up auctions for various frequencies, especially which are useful for 5G services, that is the 1 GHz range, and in the C-band frequency that is of 3.3 GHz. At the same time, there are various challenges. The main challenge being the high reserve price that is set by the government. When the government is going for auction, there will be a minimum amount of price over which the companies have to bid for. That minimum amount of price is the reserve price. So if the reserve price itself is very high, the companies would be very into going into the auction. They would think twice before bidding, because at a time when the telecom companies are suffering losses because of high competition and cutthroat competition in the telecom sector, they are bound to increase the subscriber prices and the rates for the consumers. At the same time, if the government puts a high reserve price for the upcoming technology, the telecom companies would not invest into it, or if they would want to invest more, they would reduce the amount of investment because they have limited amount of funds. So the investments would be directly affected. So the article recommends that the government should prioritize. It should prioritize the short-term goal of revenue generation and the long-term goal of industry health and development of 5G sector. So the government has to balance between both the short-term goal of revenue and the long-term goal of promoting the 5G industry. At the same time, the government also said that it is allowing direct allocation of spectrum for non-public network. For example, if a particular company wants the access to frequency band, it can bid for it and it can purchase that particular band, but it cannot give that band to public usage. For example, if the Tatas want a spectrum of network, they can bid for it and they can use it for their private use. They cannot give it to the public. So apart from the public spectrum, there is also a non-public network that the government is offering currently to individual companies. So the telecom companies are objecting to this, saying that if such a private consumption network for these companies are not given, these companies are bound to purchase the bandwidth from the telecom companies. Now it would directly affect the business of the telecom companies. That's why they are opposing this initiative. And in the conclusion, the editorial says that whenever the government is coming up with a new technology, it would impact the huge amount of population, it should keep the interest of all the segments of population in the mind, because if they put a high value on the reserve price and if they make it non-captive, non-public networks, only the premium level of customers, only the customer who is able to pay for the service, he'll get benefited from the 5G, and all those people who are not able to afford it, they will be left out. So the government has to consider all the sections and then revise the prices accordingly, at the same time balancing the short-term goal of revenue generation and the long-term goal of development of the industry. In the business page, there is a survey by the Ericsson showing that by 2027, 39% of the current telecom subscribers would be using 5G. This is just a survey, so we don't know what would be the actual amount, because there are various factors. Currently the amount of penetration of 5G is very low. Even the 5G handset, the penetration is very low, and the 5G is in still a nascent state. It is in a childhood stage. The government is just giving the access to the spectrum through bidding now, so we'll just have to wait and see how 5G will pick up. This particular article, it is based on the trends that the availability and affordability of 5G smartphone would definitely increase in future because of the rapid adoption of smartphone in both the rural areas and urban areas. If you have observed, the price of the smartphone, which was 5 years ago, has tremendously reduced now. With the same price, now we are getting more features, because as the technology develops, the cost of producing that particular technology comes down. So the editorial makes this trend by saying that because the availability and affordability will increase for the smartphones, the hardware, the 5G subscriptions are also rapidly increasing in the future. And this growth is especially driven by the huge number of smartphone users and increase in the average usage time per smartphone. At the same time, there are also various challenges, because as we just discussed in the previous articles, India has some of the highest prices of spectrum in the world. If the basic price of the spectrum itself is costly, the telecom service providers have no choice but to pass on the price to the end consumer. And the average revenue per user, even though it has recently increased, still the average revenue per user for the Indian telecom company, it is low compared to the other countries. That is why the health of the telecom sector is not very good. And this article, non-bank PPI issuers can't load via credit. The Reserve Bank has recently given a circular, and it has said that the non-bank prepaid payment instrument, they should not allow the amount to be loaded to their wallets or credit cards from the credit card amount. What are PPIs? Prepaid payment instruments are those facilities, for example, e-wallets or gift cards, which are loaded with amount already. That is why prepaid. So we can just use that amount to purchase goods and services or to transfer amount. And what are the examples of prepaid cards? For example, the smart cards, the mobile prepaid payment cards, the smart cards that we use in metro, for example, with the prepaid amount, or the e-wallet, digital wallet, where we have loaded money into the e-wallet, into the digital wallet. For example, Paytm wallet, the PhonePe e-wallet, or the digital currencies. All these are prepaid payment instruments. It can be in the form of a gift voucher of a particular company or a discount voucher given by a particular company. For example, the voucher of Amazon. You have already paid for the voucher, and you can either use the voucher to redeem that amount into your Amazon Pay balance, or you can gift the voucher to somebody else who can redeem that amount. Because you are already paid for it, it is called prepaid instrument. Now, what used to happen? Recently, there have been a rise of new type of banks called neobanks. As such, the term is very misleading, because neobanks are not banks exactly. They don't get license from RBI. These are just financial intermediaries. The examples being Jupiter, Fee Money, etc. So what happens here? Jupiter or Fee, they have agreement with a established bank. For example, both Jupiter and Fee, they have an agreement with the federal bank. So anyone who opens an account through Fee, the account would be opened in federal bank. The Fee can't accept deposits or it can't lend. It can't do either things. It would just be like an intermediary. The transaction happens in the federal bank. So the Jupiter and Fee, all this neobank, they just act as marketing agents. But at the back end, it would be the actual bank who is working. So now the RBI has given the circular saying that to load the money into the prepaid wallets into the gift vouchers, into the e-wallets, we can only use cash, debit card balance, and not the credit card balance. Because if you allow loading through the credit card balance into the prepaid payment instruments, that would be like we are using the credit card amount to load money into it. So at that point of time, it would not be prepaid because you're using the credit amount to purchase something which is prepaid. So you're indirectly using the credit amount. That is why RBI has disallowed only the non-bank PPI instrument. So even now the direct banking PPI instruments, they can be allowed. Only this neobanks, especially the companies like Fee, Jupiter, these cannot use credit card balances to load amount into their wallets. This article is about the free trade agreement that India is having with the UK. India is having discussions with UK, and by Diwali we are going to finalize on the free trade agreements. India is also having discussions with other countries like Canada, European Union, etc. to have free trade agreements. And if India has a free trade agreement with UK, it would directly impact the bilateral trade of almost $16 billion.